Sponsored by บางจาก Sustainable Business Development in Harmony with the Environment and Society. The Federal Reserve, or the privately owned central bank of the United States, have been a major observer and actor on the world's largest economy.
And with the latest figures from the job market in the United States as well as the outcome of the German Constitution Court, let's listen into the insights of Citi investment research and analyst William Lee's perspectives on this matter, as well as how lucrative are U.S. assets.
The U.S. stock market has been, at the 4-year record high leveled, but whereas the housing market, appears to be recovering.
Right.
But inflation is also perking up. So that's a contradiction. Will that complicate, policy making for the Fed?
Well, actually, what you just mentioned were some of the high points that Chairman Bernanke and the FOMC has mentioned as one of the strong points about the U.S. recovery. The housing, as you know, the global financial crisis in 2008 was centered on the housing market. And there's been a huge adjustment in the U.S. housing market. But now, recently, we've got a lot of information that shows that we're actually achieving a bottom. And some information that shows that there's actually signs of life and signs of recovery in terms of prices of real estate going up. In terms of overall inflation, the Fed's target PCE deflator is behaving very, very well. And so I think the inflation issue is not an issue for U.S. monetary policy, and rather it's supporting growth. And as I said before, Chairman Bernanke and the FOMC are very well aware that they have to monitor the situation very closely.
So you think that unemployment will improve, after this round, of action?
Well, the employment situation in the United States is actually doing kind of okay. Not great. It could certainly be a lot better. On average, we've been having about 150,000 new jobs created, and there's a lot of movements in the numbers, so you can't be pushed around by the numbers. And our chief economist, Bob DiClemente at Citi, is very good and very experienced guy, and he's essentially shown that we have pretty much trend growth at about 2.5% GDP growth, 2.5%, and it's consistent with private sector employment, growing at about 150,000. Now, the real issue comes with government employment, government expenditures. That's what is really one of the big drags on the economy now, especially state and local governments that have to really contract and go through a lot of austerity.
So in sum, Citibank research anticipates another round of quantitative easing.
Well, we are actually, the nice thing about monetary policy now, what's great about it? They tell us exactly what they're going to do. Okay. And so we at Citi are essentially believers that the guidance they give us is actually what they are going to do. And the only thing that's going to change what they say they're going to do is if information comes in, the economy is actually stronger than they forecast or weaker than they forecast. So we at Citi, in some ways, Bob has a very easy job of trying to monitor exactly what's going on and how the Fed will react to changes in the forecast.
Yeah. So the stock market will be quite attractive. What's your investment advice, for funds, say like from Thailand now? I understand that you're visiting Thailand, and we'll have a chance to talk to some clients,
Yes.
And there are some mutual funds from Thailand who are interested, in putting their money, in U.S. assets.
Well, I think it's consistent with Thai policy to try to encourage more diversification of domestic investment, because I think it's part of the government's policy to try to make sure that investors have a well-diversified basket, and increasing outflows to the United States and other parts of the world is part of the policy of the Thai government. And certainly we at Citi would help to enable that as a global bank. But one of the things that as an economist that I can say is that U.S. Corporate profits have been very strong, and the U.S. Stock market seems to have responded in that regard, that the profits growth has been very steadily, very strong. Cash positions of corporates have been doing very well. So on average, we can say that of all the sectors in the U.S. economy, the private sector, households, the companies and so on, the corporates have been doing fairly well.
With snowball effects of the global economic downturn since the hamburger crisis of the 2007-2008, now the crucial showdown of economic paradigms lie within the fate of the Eurozone nations.
Yes, Kun Patsurang, and whether the Eurozone will continue to integrate further or meet its unfortunate fallout, one trend is observable from William Lee, saying that politics of the global economy is becoming much more polarized, and markets do not like uncertainty. However, there is no alternative at this point.
The catalyst, the creation of New Europe or the destruction of the construct, lies on the political will of the federal institutions in the Eurozone.
From your side, you see any differences between Mitt Romney's policies and Obama's policies? Now, they're both, trying to sell their tax plan.
I'm not trying to avoid answering your question. Let me preface by saying that. But what I like to focus, though, is on the notion that as a global bank and taking a global perspective on the political situation, our political analyst, Tina Fordham, has emphasized that the politics of the global economy in Europe, in the United States, seems to be polarizing. The sides have become much more extreme. The middle ground seems to be becoming much more difficult to achieve. So wherever we are in almost any
and this
economy,
is not healthy, for
it's not
for
healthy
markets,
because it's hard to get hard to get a compromise, and so you create tremendous uncertainty. And uncertainty is the one thing markets don't like.
Let's move on to Europe. What kind of scenarios you see in Europe? What's the best case scenario and what's the worst case scenario? Earlier, Citi investment report appears to suggest that Greece, will have to leave the Eurozone pretty soon. There is a 90% chance, of Greece will be doing so.
That's right. Our chief economist, Phil Bauder, and our entire economics team has really done quite a lot of analysis on this area. And I think we're pretty much on the forefront of that analysis. And what we're saying is that there are a lot of challenges that face the euro area, but many of them are come back to the political answer I just gave before. The question is there enough political will to get the fiscal federalism that's needed to improve the ability of the common currency area to function? We know that since Maastricht, when the euro area was first set up, it was missing some of the elements that would really make the common currency a viable institution.
Such as?
A way of transferring
fiscal union,
right?
Yeah.
Banking union, guaranteed deposit guarantees that guarantee for exchange rate changes, a resolution regime, and recapitalization schemes.
And the awkward bureaucracy, because when they have meetings, they need 17 head of states, 17 finance ministers, 17 parliaments, to approve on the same package.
And so it's always been a delay tactic that the hard decisions to put these elements together were known in 1998, and they have still been delayed up till now. And now, as the crisis gets much more complex and much more severe, we are still faced with the same decisions, and whether or not the politicians will be able to put these institutions in place is the big question. And so you're right, our assessment of the situation in Europe falls on the ability of the political will to get these institutions put in place.
So what's your assessment of countries like Spain? Because money is drying up, in the system. You can't get your hands on the euro, because the euro is taking a flight, to other countries like Switzerland or Germany. And with this, the people have nothing to, no money to hold on, and they are resorting back to the old days of the barter system. So what's the way out, for countries like Spain or Italy next year?
I think that the way out is to really address their fundamental problems, right? Getting their house in order on the fiscal side, on the banking side. And the key is to be able to strengthen the banking system in a way that allows them to function again, to recapitalize, restructure the banking systems, to be able to let them be able to function as financial intermediaries. Right now, their loan portfolio in housing market in Spain is something that is almost unknown, because it's hard to say what the valuation of the real estate market is going to be given the uncertain situation. But putting some political certainty in, being able to say we can, in fact, and Draghi has done exactly that, and said we are assuring you that you have the funding available if you put in place the infrastructure and the required fiscal policy to be able to get a more permanent solution. And so it's almost a cat and mouse game of who moves first. And I think both sides are trying to achieve that middle. And again, the elections in Greece showed how difficult that was to achieve. Samaras won by the smallest of margins, and there it was, the issue was we need to be in the euro because of the benefits of a common currency, but at the same time, in order to be sustainably in the euro, we need to have all this austerity, all of these adjustments. And are the Greek citizens willing to be able to put up with that kind of austerity, right? Or would they just say enough is enough? And that's where our assessment comes in that you just mentioned earlier about. It's hard to be able to ask a population to go through that kind of adjustment for so long.
In our next break, we'll continue with the controversial questions from Kun Tanong to William Lee. Will the Eurozone integrate further, or will it meet its unfortunate fallout? Let's listen in our next break.